Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. Burchelle is here, and before we begin, I got a couple of questions I have to ask people because our guest is all the way from Australia, and good day down under. And I can't do that. I really need to work on that. That's terrible. But I got to ask everybody, do you feel like you're failing as a parent? Are your children out of control? Are you experiencing disharmony and tension and anger, stress, misunderstanding, and conflict within the family? You don't have dinner together because you just don't like each other that much, and you just as soon enjoy your dinner rather than to argue. Well, we've got somebody that's going to be able to help you with your family unit because dysfunctionality is running rampant in our society today. And Kerre Burley is with us. But first, Burchelle, I know that your family is practically, it's like Mary Poppins. You're practically perfect in every way, right?
If I wouldn't say it is probably the exact opposite of that, if it couldn't be any further. And I think that that is reality. I used to think that I was so out of the ordinary and nobody was like me or understood what I was going through or any of the above. And really, I've come to an understanding that whether it's the same thing or it's different, everybody is going through their journey. And when things tend to be similar, then we find our people and our healing in that. So I'm very happy to be here, especially today, talking about this subject because there are so many ideas wrapped around it. So welcome, Kerre, for being here. We have Kerre Burley with us today, and this is going to be an extraordinary show to end the day. So I'm very happy for this.
And Kerre, I was joking with you before we began saying that in my world, in my expertise, and I've been around a little while now, I have yet to find a family that does not have some form of dysfunctionality in one way or another, which means, of course, that you're going to be employed forever. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. And look, it's great to be here. And I think I want to come clean right from the start and let parents know that I too was a mum of 5 boys. I still am a mum of 5 boys. And I often would say 3 of them only a mother could love. It was challenging, I guess 20 years. But it's interesting that when we talk about the word dysfunction, that means so much to so many people. And where I come in, what I do, which is not really a job, but I just like to explain to parents that dysfunction isn't normal. Just because everybody's going through it, it's not a normal process. And there are certainly, as you said, many things wrapped around dysfunction. But I think we've got the Simpsons to blame. I think originally we grew up with the Simpsons and symptoms, pretty close. Simpsons. And I just believe that, we do have parents that are embarrassed. We have parents that try to hide or actually put on, as you said, a brave front. But at the end of the day, I love working with parents who, they draw a line in the sand and go, okay, enough's enough. I don't feel confident. I have way too much input coming in. I'm not sure what's working. And I just love sharing with these parents, to get their confidence back, to get the mojo back. We've got to screen some of the stuff that's out there and really go back to just feeling like, okay, I've got this. And a little bit of support's great. Doing a bit of parental development's great. But yeah, we've got to get rid of that dysfunction in the family. It's not worth it.
My mom and dad, as I was growing up, I was saying, boy, these people are weird. And I don't know what's wrong with them, but it's just not working out and stuff. And it wasn't until later on that I discovered when I found out how old they were. My mom, when my older sister was born, she was 19 and my dad was 21. And when I came along, they were like 25. Well, they now know that their brains weren't even developed yet, and so their brains kept falling out of their head, and they kept putting them back and stuff, and mom would lose her to mind occasionally, and all of that. And it wasn't until I got a lot older that I realized it really wasn't their fault. It was the lack of knowledge that they had because nobody told them any better. Is that you kind of your work and your world and all the things that you do?
Pretty much. You're right. It doesn't come with a manual. And I find many parents, when they become parents, they just have no clue. And we've lost that village that once was. We've lost the aunties and uncles and grandmas and granddads being close to us. And so, yeah, parents sometimes are a bit on their own. And I often say, instead of being proud of what you're achieving and being grateful and managing, nowadays we seem to be suffering guilt, and there's a lot of negativity around parents, and parents start trying to do too much too soon and then feel like they're failing. And of course, that just comes through when you're chatting to parents, and you can imagine that seeps into the household, and so of course the children are affected. So it's an ongoing. I don't know if we say it's new. I can remember Socrates complaining about the younger generation 400 BC. So I mean, there's always going to be that challenge between parents and children, but I do think it's getting worse as we try to do too much, to fit too much into our lives. So yes, it's a long-winded answer, Kevin, but I think we've got to come to the conclusion that parents do need support, they need help, and they need to be happy about getting it, and not keeping it under wraps.
I remember when my firstborn was born, and we brought him into the room, and he was like a day old at this point, and my wife was going to breastfeed and stuff, and he kept falling asleep. And so we were like, oh, you poor thing, he's really tired. Being born is a real tough experience. And so we said, well, we'll just let him sleep. And this German nurse came in, and she said, well, how have we done? Have we fed him yet? And he said, no, he keeps falling asleep. And she goes, well, and this is the first lesson of child rearing that I learned. She said, well, that's not acceptable. He must eat. He must eat. So this is what you do. He said, he keeps falling asleep. And she said, this is what you do. You take your hand, put it on the back of his head. You take your other hand, put it on his face, and then you briskly go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. and then he woke up and ate, and everything was fine. But we had no idea, because we were treating this little thing like he was a China doll, and we didn't. But we were both the babies of our family. And so we had no younger siblings to boss around or to talk about and stuff. So we had no earthly idea what it was going to be like to raise children. And if you ask my sons today, they'll say, Dad, you had no earthly idea how to raise children.
At the end of the day, Kevin, if your sons are talking to you as adult children, I'd say you've done well.
Well, 50% of the time anyway. Except when they need money, then they're very talkative. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. Well, it's the dad bank, of course.
Yes, the dad bank is running low. So, but anyway, every family has got these issues, and they transcend by ages too, because if you have an older child that is 5 and they act a certain way, and then they get to be 10, they act a certain other way, and then if you're a girl and you get to 13, and the wheels fall off, and then you got to figure out all of that kind of stuff. So where does somebody go to get this knowledge?
Great question, Kevin. And I often say, think of professional development, think of personal development, and then think of parental development. And I do say to my parents, and I really like parents getting their confidence back. We are in control, although many parents don't feel they are. We are still influencers and we're still persuaders, and we just need the confidence to be able to come up with, I guess you could say, plans and guidelines to keep your children on the right track. So we don't need and this comes down to, we don't need to be harsh. We don't need to try and be friends. We need to stay parents, but we also need children to have an understanding that they're unconditionally loved. And I know that's such a silly statement for me to say to parents, because parents will say, oh, but they know I love them, and I always make sure, I comment if they clean their room, or I always make sure I pat them on the back and tell them that they're doing well at school. So even that the idea of unconditionally love isn't understood by some parents. And I think that's the cornerstone. That's when we get back to that, when a parent can understand that no matter what, their children are unconditionally loved, then we can start to work on other areas and just assist parents to remember what it's like.
I need to say this because I think there are parents out there that could benefit from working with you, Kerre, number one. But I was asking my sister the other day. Now, she's a little older than me. She's in her early 70s. And I asked her, do you ever recall when we were growing up that either one of our parents, just out of the blue, for no reason, said, you're so special, I love you? And she said, nope, never happened. Now, I'm an older guy, and it's been, and was a completely different generation. But then those parents are now grandparents, and their kids are now parents. Those behaviors are repeating themselves sometimes, aren't they, Rochelle?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's good to recognize too, because it helps you understand your parents and your grandparents. Because I share it with us and we can't get the understanding from them, but we're able to kind of create that, then we can maybe persuade in a healthy way, a different way of doing things. Um, and it is hard when you are younger and you're working with people that are a little bit older than you, or um, even vice versa, because kids are so much different these days. They seem to like learn different things a lot faster and be more curious on things that I wasn't very curious on. And so even for me, it's kind of humbling to have to keep up with the younger generation. And if our parents knew how to understand their kids and what they're going through at their age in this world now, I think it would be so much easier for them to grasp onto the ideas of what they're feeling, what they're going through, why they're behaving the way they are, why they're doing the things or saying some of the things that they are. But also, Kerre, oh man, we need to go to a break in about a minute. But if you could take us early, Kerre, I really want to hear your perspective on what you think about, doesn't it start with the parent kind of loving themselves first? Because if they can't show, it's hard for a child to listen because words kind of just become air, if you know what I mean.
Yes, and you're especially right. Children pick up on things very quickly, and I, remember the old-fashioned feedback sandwich that was always bantered around. Saying something nice and then layering something that was not so nice, and then layering something nice.
Yep.
My children saw through that when they were toddlers. It's like that. As soon as Mum would say something nice, you'd see them. They just stand there and bristle and go, okay, I'm ready for it. Hit me with the negative statement. And they were onto it. And so there's a time where parents have to be authentic. And it is so interesting, Brachelle. I've been following here in Australia, I've been following a line of thought from our childhood experts that are encouraging parents to stop praising their children. And it's almost like parents are listening to that and sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because it's not so much that the experts are trying to explain stop praising your child, but their research is showing that if you're inauthentic, or if you're being too general, if you're not really targeting what you're happy about, yes, it can be more damaging. And so, we should be looking at encouraging and picking those right moments to be authentic with the children. At what age? Now, you are right. I do find that some parents have that. Do not have the ability to let down their guards. I'm just thinking of one recently who was a policeman who said to me he had challenges with his child, and he said to me, but you know what, this is the way I got brought up and there's nothing wrong with me. And I sort of gave him a bit of a smile and went, okay, we move on, because at the end of the day, the problem was stemming from the dad, who was way too controlling and really shutting his child down at every opportunity. And so I'm very lucky. I work with a process called the SleepTalk Process, and that in itself, Brachelle, actually helps the child, but it helps the parent just as much. We don't tell the parent that at the start. Watch this father actually soften, and I watched this father over a course of a few months just completely, not so much change, but completely let his guard down. And of course, that just permeated through the house. And interestingly enough, these challenges that they'd been having with their children just dissipated. So you're exactly right. But again, it comes down to we're not judging parents, we don't guilt parents, but we just want you to realize that, if you've had a hard time growing up, sometimes you've got these entrenched patterns of behavior, and you don't even realize it. And that sort of plays out from generation to generation. So
if it was good enough for my dad, it's good enough for me. We need to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Kerre, and we're going to teach you more about parenting, because it's harder to get a license than it is to have a child these days. We'll be right back.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald. Brachelle is right there, and Kerre Burley is here. Go to our website, which is creatingfunctionalfamilies.com, which is kind of a conflict in terms, isn't it? Are families designed to be functional?
Absolutely, Kevin. And I like to tell parents there is a thing called parental bliss. it's
I thought that was when the kids moved out.
Well, that's another story entirely. But no, there certainly is light at the end of the tunnel for many parents, or they may not feel like it at the moment. We have this saying, small steps towards a goal is still progress, and that's what parents need to remember.
Oh, very, very good. Now, dysfunctionality in families, and then it comes in all. Some of it's chemically induced. Some of it is decisions that that were made a long time ago, and some are because mom and dad aren't getting along very well. Do you help mom and dad get along a little bit better?
Oh, absolutely. It really comes down to Kevin. Sometimes it's the family dynamic that is actually driving the wedge between parents, and you often find whether it's a mum or a dad or one partner and another partner, they can have completely different views and not even be on the same page about raising children. And often when I'm working with parents that I can see that there's that conflict all the time in the house because they've got different views, we like to take it back a couple of steps and really get them discussing, communicating with each other, even coming up with a plan together. Because children are really good at understanding that one parent does one thing, one parent does the other. They can play them off. But the thing that's important is not only do we want children to or families to have a plan, and you know this, Kevin, and Rochelle would know this. I've seen brides to be spend 18 months on perfecting their wedding day. 18 months spot on, and then absolutely no thought when they find out that they're going to be a parent. Maybe they'll spend 9 months preparing the nursery, but neither of them give any thought to what sort of parents they want to be. What are their values going to be? Who's going to do what? What happens when the children start growing up? And to have it just a nucleus or a plan together, it brings them on the same page. Now they can find out then that they've had different upbringings. They're totally different. But that's where communication and talking and planning ahead just makes it so much easier as, of course, the children are growing up. But it's a great question, Kevin, because it also brings me to the point that when we look at family breakdown, we look at relation breakdown at the moment, I believe, and I know I'm being general here, but I believe it's unexpected or sort of, I guess you could say, intentions that have not been fulfilled or expectations that were not fulfilled, and a lack of communication. And I think if you can tackle those two mountains, not only will relationships improve, but also I believe the family dynamic improves. And we have a challenge at the moment in the 21st century, because, we live in a great time. We live in IT, we live in AI, but at the end of the day, humans, and that's not just children and parents, but all of us, we're losing our communication skills. We're losing our ability to read people and really focus on communication. And, look at every single business that we work in. If their communication is off amongst people who work together, the business is off. The business is not operating fully functional. So it's exactly the same when we're looking at relationships, and exactly the same when we're looking at families. So there's a lot of communication needed.
Well, it's interesting because my family grew up, and my father was not very communicative. Her family grew up and they hid everything. So if they had an argument, they would hide it and go to bed, and then in the morning it was never talked about again.
Mhm.
And so my attitude was, going into being a parent, I wanted to explain things to my children rather than just say, don't talk back and go to your room, which are two of my favorite subjects that I got when I was a kid. And but so I would talk incessantly to my children about what was going on and the behavior that they did and why it was wrong and why it disappointed me and all that stuff. And then my wife would walk by and go, "Would you just stop talking about it?" And that happens with families all the time, is because we had no idea going into it. And do parents actually are there any classes, or do you offer any classes for parents that are, before they make the fateful decision to even try to get pregnant, that they have, that they go through all of the things that they're liable to face when that happens? Is that even a thing? I wish it was.
Oh, Kevin, I agree with you. I'm currently working on a book and some workshops, believe it
Good.
or not, that I want to offer just that, because I just think that would make everybody's life so much easier. They're not finished yet, but it's in the pipeline for sure.
Well, when you do get them finished, you have to come back here because we need to get every prospective parent before they do the big deed, if you will, to understand, because so many don't, and they have no earthly idea what's going to happen until this little thing pops up and is right there in their house, and it's like, okay, now what?
It doesn't quite work like that. It's great, Rochelle. I can see you're laughing as well. It's a long 9 months, Kevin.
Well, for some of us, for others of us, it was the best 2 minutes of your life. But for I'm joking, but Rochelle, I know that it's being a woman is. I got to tell you, you guys have it tough. Most men would cry like a baby if they had to go through what you guys do.
Yeah, I mean they probably would, and that's okay. That's why were given the challenges we were. But um, do you ever have pushback, Carrie, um, with men being able to want to understand enough? I don't know how to phrase this question because um, maybe it's just the age that I'm in right now and the people I'm around, but um, boys seem to just kind of get frustrated and seem confused, even if they are learning something. And I see that it's pushback and kind of having to go through that themselves. And even mothers and just anybody who's a parent, when you realize that it starts with you, um, like for example, if my grandma did this with us, so this is a real time thing. One of the kids was hitting another one of them, and they got in trouble. And she said, "We don't hit," as she hit her on her hand. And it was like, okay, well, that was contradictory. But my grandma really thought that, she's like, I'm gonna show you how it feels, and this is why. But it didn't come across in that way, or even communication behind closed doors, and it being really chaotic, and then face to face it was just like absolutely nothing was wrong. And it started with the relationship of each parent in themselves and together. So is there ways that you help them kind of realize that we need to start with your relationship first before we can go into both of you being open and willing to reroute the way some things are being done?
No, great question, Rochelle. And, as parents, I think we all have egos. We all think we're doing a great job. And sometimes parents, and particularly the male energy, now I won't say the males, I won't pick on males, Kevin, but there is always a male energy in a relationship. And if the male energy really takes it to heart if they feel like they're failing. And sometimes they just put their heads in the sand. There's a couple of different options. And sometimes they basically just don't want to know about it. They're just going to ignore it, in other words. And then there's other times where they know there's a problem, but they really want the nurturer to take care of it. You take care of it, and I'll just watch as we go. And this certainly happens with our SleepTalk process. You'll find we do encourage both parents to be doing it. But ultimately, in about 90% of cases, there'll be one parent that will start, and the other parent won't come on board until they actually see the results. They actually see the improvements happening. And then all of a sudden, it's much easier for them to jump in. And I think it comes back to, Rochelle, everybody in their own time. We don't push anybody, particularly, as I mentioned, this father who was very adamant there was nothing wrong with him. It was, and some mothers are exactly the same. They want to blame the child. It's not my fault. I'm providing, I'm a good mom or a good dad, and I'm providing them all this. And look, it's their problem. And unfortunately, there is that's where they go to the doctors, or they go to the psychologist, or they go to a specialist, and the child will be sitting next to them, and all they'll do is complain about what all the symptoms are and why the child is broken or not doing a proper job. And it breaks my heart because they don't realize that's just perpetuating the problem. And it's really, we should be thinking, and this is why I say we should be grateful for our children, all of them. And no matter what they do, they're basically, they're good kids. Yes, there might be behavior or mannerisms that you're not comfortable with or that are unacceptable, but you still have great children, and that's, we should be thanking them every single day. In fact, Mother's Day for me, believe it or not, is I send cards to my kids saying thank you for giving me the opportunity of being your parent. And as I said, and there's times where I'm thinking I'm not going to survive these children. They're going to do me in. But they've all made it through to adulthood. They're now parents of their own. And isn't that wonderful that, you can look back in as many mistakes as I made over the years, and I made lots, that I think, wow, they've grown up to be fathers themselves now. And they're doing a pretty good job. That's got to be a pat on the back for me. So I don't focus on all the bad stuff. I think I got it right. I got a little bit right. But this is what I share with parents when I'm talking about, yes, we do need to build ourselves up. We need to be aware that if you're, parental development, it's never too late. You can really start learning some of these things. And it very much resonates with professionals, people that are going and doing their professional development when they're talking about emotional intelligence and we're talking about teamwork and how people operate. It's exactly the same for a parent. So they're great skills that we can share with both.
And we need to take a break, but I'm really interested in when somebody comes to work with you. Yeah, is it because they are at the end of their rope and they've tried everything else, and that they are now kind of desperate? Or is it because they're forward thinking and they're looking for an answer before there's a problem? Wouldn't that be fun if everybody was looking for the answer before there was a problem? But I don't think it works that way. So we need to take a quick break. We'll be right back in 1:10. We're talking with our friend Kerre Burley, and go to her website again, which is creatingfunctionalfamilies.com. And we will be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Kerre Burley is our guest. And Rochelle, I got a question for you.
Yes.
You have quite literally changed a ton in the last year and a half. Do you think you would make a different and or better parent today than you would have a year and a half ago based upon what you're learning and the things that you're doing?
100%. I am thankful that I've gotten time to grow and to be kind of on my own, and I get to be the person to help all my other friends who are younger and who are parents. And I think, like Kerre said, we spend so much time trying to put a lot of things in boxes, if you will. You know, this has to be this way. This is the way I want this. Here's why, blah, blah, blah. And life doesn't always meet your box expectations. And I'd say 95% of the time, the universe is laughing in your face because that's what you have to learn with going with the flow. I think that's a big part of families and household. Uh, Things are changing really rapidly, a lot faster than even they were when I was a kid. And we need to be able to kind of keep up with that in the household and be open to change and willingness for things to be different. And also sharing with our kids, hey, I don't know what's going on and I don't have everything figured out. Um, but I'm doing the best that I can. And if I make mistakes, I I'm here for you to learn from that so you don't have to do that on your own. Kind of just talking to them at an equal level of understanding would probably change so many things. And I realized it's because we don't speak to ourselves that way as adults because we still have the same habits and tracking and things like we used to when as we were raised and the people before us. So it can be very powerful, but I think that no matter the age you have a child, you're not ready. And I think I know that already. So
And the question would be,
just if you agree with that, Carrie, we can be, if we're easier on ourselves and easier going with the flow of life and things and sharing what we're also going through with our kids, obviously at a healthy level, um, that it kind of teaches them to do the same thing and they can pass that on. And just no matter what age, I see people of many ages that being a parent is not something I think you're supposed to know how to do because every child is different, right?
Absolutely. And it's very organic. You're correct. But, it's sometimes letting parents say it's okay to let your ego go. It's okay to become childlike and a bit goofy. Doesn't matter if your
Hmm.
children are young or if your children are into teens. I must admit, they I didn't do so well with the first few of my children, but my last child benefit enormously because I'd broken down so many barriers, and I just
Hmm.
found that laughter, certainly laughter, having fun, smiling in the face of adversity, just softened everything and made everything so much better. And one of the things that did really make that distinction for me was probably when my children were just getting into teenagers, my first three boys. It was discovered I had nodules, and I literally had to, because I used to yell at them all the time, as mothers do, and they rushed me off to hospital, and I almost lost my voice to the point that we operated, they removed the nodules, but I had 6 months that I wasn't allowed to talk. My voice still was wonderful. But it was also retraining myself that I could no longer sing, I could no longer whisper, and I could no longer even yell because it was very dicey. And do you know what I noticed in that 6 months was I found different ways of communicating with the boys other than,
Hmm.
and they weren't shutting down. We could actually discuss things much better. We can, good, as you said, get much more emotional, and talk about feelings, and solutions just flowed. And I'm sure it was because it was a better energy. Most parents say to me, but my children, it's too late now. They don't even speak to me. I'm saying it's never too late. But as Kevin said earlier, yes, the more that we can talk to our children when they're younger, the easier it is to keep that communication so strong. But then if you found, after I did, after all these years, that it wasn't working for you, then there's other ways, and particularly being much more relaxed, much more fun, much more jovial makes such a difference.
Hmm.
why do parents have such a tough time telling their children, "I'm sorry. I was I was mistaken."
Again, Kevin, great question. I'm sure it's just ego, and they really don't want to admit that they've made mistakes. And I think that's one of the big lessons I learned with my last two children, that I would often, particularly if I'd fly off the handle or I'd do something wrong, I always made sure that I went in and apologized. Sometimes I would just say, do you know, it wasn't you that Mum was angry at. Really, it was myself for the way I handled it. Please, just accept that Mum does make mistakes. Mum's human. And it's interesting that especially young children or teenagers, they get it. You're teaching them emotional intelligence. You're teaching them that you're human and it's okay for them to make mistakes as well. So that was a big learning for me, and something that, as you said, Kevin, if parents are having trouble with it and they know when they've messed up, it's worth just basically even writing it down, leaving a little sticky note somewhere, just telling that child that if you can't come out verbally, you can still get the message across and still communicate that while you're processing yourself and improving your communication.
Well, don't you think it has such a big, like one of the biggest things that has to do with all of this wrapped into a whole is forgiveness, right?
Yes, for yourself and for your children. And again, I often say that, children's job is to push your buttons.
Yes, it is. And they're good at it.
They are very good at it. But you know what? While they're pushing the buttons, they're also looking at you and thinking, well, okay, how is she reacting? How is that, and that's their spot. They're taking it all in, and they're really evaluating, this is showing them what sort of person they're going to be. So, when I have a parent say to me, oh, he does this and he does that and he embarrasses me here and he embarrasses me there, it's like, okay, well, that's not going to change. And we're not saying that our children will become absolutely perfect, but we can change and certainly be much more accepting. And it makes a huge difference.
It's really important that we... As parents, we wear the big boy and girl pants, and then we hitch them up and say, when we're wrong, we say that we're wrong. And I think that goes a long way to giving the kids a little bit more. And plus the fact, if mom and dad are of one mind and they go and say, we were wrong, rather than, oh, that stupid father of yours, I'm so sorry for him or what he did.
Oh, absolutely. It's certainly, you don't want parents playing against each other. And yes, it does happen. And certainly we know if there is a breakdown in the relationship or the marriage, that sometimes the children, unfortunately, get really used as the tool or to hurt the other. And that's very unfortunate as well. But the parents that are in that mode, I think, when they realize what they're doing and realize that there can be change, that's the time to reach out to someone. And Kevin, you asked, what sort of quality do I get? I get parents who come to me that are about to lose their children. So yes, it's the desperation. They're about to be taken off them from the state. And that could be because the child's refusing to go to school or his behavior is out of control. But then on the other side, I do get parents who just want their children to be happier. Maybe the child is, very anxious. They're not doing well at school. They're not gelling with the other kids. So I go from one extreme to the other. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter where the children are on that line. We can help both parents, we can help the family, and we can certainly do processes to help the child. So, it's a beautiful, beautiful place to be.
Well, I can tell you this, I'm probably not the only one, Kerre, that this has ever happened to. But I want your opinion on this. What would you do if you were home, and like my dad was home, and he gets a knock at the door, and two King County police officers are standing on the doorstep saying, "Hello, Mr. McDonald, can we come in?" And then he comes in, and then I show up 15 minutes later, and they're talking about my behavior from the day before, which apparently, as near as I can remember it, wasn't very good at that day. And then the police lectured me on a minute on alcohol abuse and stuff, and then they left. And what would you, if you were my dad, what would you have said to me, and what would your reaction have been?
No, great question. And again, we'll put this in the different generations because think I'm about your generation, Kevin. That to me, back if we went 40, 50 years ago, that my dad would have pulled out the strap and I would have copped a hiding. Thank goodness that doesn't happen in the Western world anymore. What should happen now is dad needs to sit down and go, tell me about this. Tell me what's happening with you. What's going on? And there's got to be a dialogue opened. Now, in saying that, I know there'll be teenage parents that'll go, oh, yeah, sure, my child will just open up. So I talk about things like conversation of change. I talk about car conversations because I used to have teenagers, and if I ever sat particularly one son I'm thinking of was brilliant at storming out of the room. Anytime I needed to talk, he could just stomp straight out the room, and that was the end of the conversation. So yes, having little things like he also was a football player, so it used to be footy training over in the car, and I would not start the car to go home until we addressed whatever we needed to address. And he couldn't stomp out because home was 30 minutes away. So there are lots of things like that, but that's it. Tell me what's going on. And interesting, Kevin, that we pick on children that are getting into alcohol, children that are getting into trouble. Often parents disassociate with them at that point where actually they need to be there for support, and they need to, even if it's a stalemate and a child does not want to talk to you, you need to be sitting next to them saying, I'm here for you, son. You know, when you want to talk, just open up, but no, I'm here for you. They need you more than ever. But many teenagers just feel completely invisible, and many parents have no idea what's going on with them. Again, because they've let that conversation, they've let that communication go. And it is tough. And Rochelle said it, it's tough being a kid in this day and age, but it's tougher when you go to high school or you go to schools, you've got your peers, you've got all your influences, you've got all these negative things coming at you. And they need, you might not think so, but they need parents more than ever. So you've got to step up if you're a parent.
Yep.
So do you think that just asking me if I got sick, and when I did, but I said no, of course, and he said too bad, and that was the end of the conversation, do you think that may have not been the best way to handle it?
Well, we all do what we can with the resources we have. But Kevin, it's as an adult, you've recognized that, yes, your dad was very limited with his communication. I have and I guess you forgive them and you move on. And that just goes into, that's probably why you've been such a great talker as a parent, because at the end of the day, we either do this, we go down the same track as our parents, or we find we do the exactly opposite. But that just comes down to how we've grown up, how we've accepted it, our experiences. And then we think, well, okay, what can we do to make it better, to make sure that we don't go down that track?
Rochelle, this is a great conversation, isn't it?
It is. It is. I'm sad that we have to go soon, but I want to have time to touch base on patience.
Ooh, patience.
Yes.
So let me take this break real quick. We're just going to be gone 30 seconds, and then we're going to ask Kerre about the art. I think it's an art form of patience, and we'll be right back.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at CISA.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk. We've got a great show for you today because we're talking about children. We're talking about parents. Actually, we're talking about parents who have children and how to behave, maybe do some things a little bit differently. Burchelle asked that question again. I think it's just beautiful.
Yes, just my whole head is wrapped around the one thing I don't think we've spoken on that is so, so, so crucial, as even we learn for ourselves before we have children, and that is patience. So that's something that you'd say you see people struggle with the most.
Oh, absolutely. Because, Rochelle, we live in a really fast-paced world, and parents are often juggling career, the house, the kids, everything at one go. Now, when you say patience, I say patience and calm face. You need to work on your poker face, particularly when you've got young children who, again, they're not thinking about all the things that you've got to fit into a day. All they're thinking, particularly if you're getting ready to go out to school, or the bus is due any moment and they've only got one sock on and they can't find the other sock, and there's 100 different scenarios, but definitely patience, definitely calm face. And it's funny that you should say this, but I also teach parents that if it's really bad, find yourself a hiding spot into the pantry.
Yes, that's great advice.
Pantry, under the bed, anywhere where you can just get your thoughts together. And when you're getting those thoughts together and you're looking for patience, it's really put yourself in your children's put yourselves in their shoes. It comes back to emotional intelligence, knowing what your trigger is, particularly if we talk about autonomy. If a child is not going to or not going to make the bus, let them miss it. And let them understand what the consequences are. Well, I've got to go to work now. You've missed the bus. You sort it out. And I've done that myself. Get in the car and go. Because at the end of the day, I guarantee you the lesson learned for that child is, tomorrow I better do this a little bit better. And it might take time, but teaching the children, you know what the consequences are, but they don't. They have no idea. So depending on whatever it is, definitely calm face, definitely I teach parents, if they have to, just to deep breathe. But then on the other hand, depending on the family circumstances, I also get you to laugh. I mean, if you can laugh, it will diffuse situations. And if you see the funny side, and particularly if you then can put yourself in the shoes of the child and go, well, depending what age they are, I sort of now understand it. I'm not being an adult anymore. Now I understand what they are. And with my children, particularly as they were getting into teens, I used to say to them, well, what do you think the solution is? Don't be there to answer, to be their knight in shining armor. Let them work it out. And sometimes they get really good at coming back with solutions that you never even thought of. But yes, patience, it is something we can nurture. It's something we can get better at. Unfortunately, most of us, particularly when we're younger, we just give ourselves, we're good at this and we're bad at that. We're good at this and we're bad at that. We have all these limiting beliefs wrapped around many areas of ourselves, our personality. And really, when you become a parent, you might as well throw them out because you're starting from scratch again. And you are. I mean, I laughed at this. I used to say to people, hey, if I get the kids to school by 9 o'clock, that's a win. I've done well.
Yes.
The funny part is we used to live in the same street as the school.
Well, and thank you for bringing up such a good point too, Kerre. You mentioned healthy consequences. Because not only does that teaching the child that mom still has to take care of herself and she's doing the best that she can to give me everything that I need, but also it allows them to realize that they have control of their life and they can take care of themselves and they can have that time to break down, okay, well, where did I go wrong? And also to just not sweep it under the rug, communicate, what have you been thinking about? Where's your mind at after you've had time to think about this? And is there any ways that maybe I can help you? And how did that make you feel? All of the above, because it teaches such a bigger lesson than to just punish them or to become the yelling, screaming noise that gets blocked out, and they stop hearing you. So I think
Well,
that's a very powerful point.
yes, and we certainly live in an age now where I have parents come to me and say they're so entitled, they're so ungrateful. And I'm thinking, well, we're not going to blame here, but really, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
You have really let them stand on their feet since they were toddlers. And so again, it's just starting to put yourself in their shoes, and now let's have some strategies and some skills to make them start packing their own lunch, make them actually start, if they have to, if they're teenagers, they should be learning how to use a washing machine. They should be able to start cooking a meal once or twice. Things that parents go, oh, they'd never do that. Well, then let them go without dinner for a night or two. It is interesting
You have
that
to teach them.
that's right. We're educators, and I think we forget that. We think that we have to look after them, but we really want them to grow and to nurture. Because again, if you think back to your parenting plan, what ultimately do you want for your children? And if you can get that outcome in your head, you can then say, well, what skills will they need along the way? And that's where a plan comes into force.
Kerre, in my world, it's amazing to me how many adults are walking around saying, "I don't know how to cook." It's like, you didn't cook when you were a kid, and it's also like, I wanted to ask you before we go, because we're going to run out of time. Does karma play a role in any of parenting and the children that we have? Let me explain. My son had a brother, and they were 3 years apart, and the older brother and the younger brother did not get along, and the younger brother always was going after the older brother now and stuff, and getting him in trouble and stuff. And so now he's an adult, and he married a gal who had a 4-year-old who was the spitting image of his brother. And so now he has to go through his whole life going, he reminds me of him so much, and he's doing the same dang things that he was doing. And it's like, that's karma, dude.
Yes. Well, I have another saying that says, live long enough to be a burden to your children.
Hey, I'm there. I get that. I'm there, man.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. And when we do talk about karma, yes, you often find that, again, maybe it's genetics. I'm not a specialist in that area, but you do find that sometimes the children basically cause more problems for their parents. And when the grandparents look at it, we have a little secret giggle because we think, okay, your turn now. That's karma.
I've heard that so much from grandparents that go, I like being a grandparent because I can give them back.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And every Christmas, you buy the most noisiest drum kit you can. Or,
just because you can. And by the way, we've been talking with Kerre Burley, and go to our website again, which is creatingfunctionalfamilies.com. There's also another one. You have another website.
There is another website, and that's called the SleepTalk Process. That really talks about the process that I utilize with a lot of my parents. Kevin, and I've got time to do a shameless plug. I've just launched my book, Raising Tiny Humans Successfully. So I'm going to let people know. And its byline is a not so serious guide to parenting. And I think that's important for parents, again, to know that it's out there. It's not a scientific, technical parenting book. It's written very simply with lots of stories to make parents realize, yep, there's definitely lots you can do to get back.
What's the name of the book again?
It's called Raising Tiny Humans Successfully.
Raising Tiny Humans Successfully, which is the goal of every parent, just to get out of it alive.
Yes.
So Kerre Burley has been with us, and they can find that book on which website? On both?
Just Amazon. Yep, they can just go to Amazon to pick that up.
And that's Kerre Burley, and there's no E after the Kerre because her dad forgot it when she was born.
No I.
No I. No I.
E.
So thank you for being here. We have really appreciated it. And by the way, you can always find out all the information you need about her on the YouTube and on positivetalkradio.net and everywhere else we are, because she is phenomenal. And I want to thank you for being here. Rochelle, anything else?
Nope, just thank you for your time. I extremely honor this, and keep doing the work you're doing because it is having a huge effect. And I am going to buy your book, and I'm going to share it with my people as well. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Rochelle. Thanks, Kevin.
Have an awesome day. And it's 8 o'clock in the morning in Australia. They don't know what time it is here. So it's 4 o'clock here. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you for getting up early and talking to us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's